Prologue. This is our second class on Introduction to the Nature of Reality, and it's based around the Heart Sutra. So we begin, as we have done in the past week, 2 weeks, month, by adjusting one's posture. So in other words, just get comfortable in your seat. You want your back straight and your shoulders relaxed. And you can either close your eyes or keep them open, whatever feels most comfortable for you. And while you continue to breathe normally and naturally, I want you to imagine that all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the deities, the Dharma protectors, the hearers, solitary realizers, and the Arahats all appear in the space above you. Think that each of these persons has a body of light. This light representing our emptiness itself, and the form of the body representing all of their good qualities. And these beings have all put an end to suffering and developed all of their good qualities. And the reason they have done that is to help us and every other sentient being. So I think this is what you'd like to do. You'd like to put an end to your own suffering, getting rid of its causes, and develop all of your good qualities along with their causes for the sake of others. To accomplish that, we're going to take refuge in the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the deities, Dharma protectors, and so forth. So recite along with me. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then, in response to this wish, imagine that lights and nectars pour from the heart of the Buddha, and they wash over you, removing every impediment to an authentic refuge. Then recollect every other sentient being and make a wish that every one of them have happiness in its causes, be free from suffering in its causes, abide in a state of joy, higher rebirth, liberation, and enlightenment, and also abide in equanimity, being free of any bias that brings about attachment or aversion or indifference. And decide to bring about these four immeasurable states yourself so that you can help others do the same. And while we're in front of this refuge, merit field, we're going to recite the 7-limb prayer together. So join me in saying, reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. And just in case there's been any clinging or even vestige of clinging to the merit we've created, we're going to now offer a mandala to free ourselves of that clinging. So reciting along with me, think of we're offering up the world, our body, ourselves, and any merit we've created. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. Imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Gururata Mandala Kamnayatayami. So we've released the mandala. The Buddha has accepted it and smiled at us with delight. And we look up into his eyes. We see that delight. We feel accepted and at ease. And then an emanation of the Buddha leaves his heart and moves through space to come abide above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. The emanation descends, entering the crown of your head, coming down through your body and resting at the level of your heart. The radiance of this emanation begins to expand, becoming ever brighter, filling your body and mind with light. And this light seeps out through the pores of your skin and begins to fill the 10 directions of space. And filling space, acknowledge that wherever there are beings within space, that they've been touched by this light and transformed into the fully awakened state. As the light begins to withdraw and it re-enters your heart. And wherever you are, you can actually feel your body, you feel it embodied and at ease, and you're breathing normally and naturally. You understand that what's taken place here is just on the level of imagination. And it's put upon your mind an imprint for this to actually take place. It's one of the many causes or conditions leading to your enlightenment for the benefit of others. So allow a sense of joy to arise in dependence upon that knowledge. And then breathing in deeply through your nostrils. Exhale through your mouth and allow your eyes to flutter open and your body to move in whichever way it feels comfortable. And make yourself at ease and be present in front of your screen. Okay, so let's have a look at this nature of reality. So today we're going to go through the introduction again with a bit more detail. And then we're going to look at how we can engage with the wisdom. So as you might remember last week, when we engage with the wisdom, it begins with Shariputra asking a question and then Avalokiteshvara's answers. So we're going to have a look at how Avalokiteshvara answers Shariputra on the paths of accumulation and preparation. It's on these two paths that we come across the four profundities, that form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, and form is not other than emptiness. So we're just going to have a look at this sort of briefly, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what they call the objective negation. And what we're going to do here is set this up to look at it in more depth next week. Now, remember, the central theme of all of the Perfection of Wisdom sutras is this profound union of compassion and wisdom. On the surface, it looks like
Eddie, don't forget to stop your screen every now.
Yeah. Okay. So on the surface, it looks really like it's all about the wisdom, but actually, it's about the union of wisdom and method. And these are the books. So the only different one here from last week is this one at the back here with Manjushri with a sword. And it's a book called Searching for the Self, and it's by the Dalai Lama and Venerable Thupten Chodron. This book is particularly good. I read out an explanation of the mantra to Miffy last night. I said, I want to present it like this for the class. It's so succinct and I think quite beautiful. This book, Searching for the Self, and the book next to it, Insight into Emptiness, to me have the best presentation on what's called the objective negation, the object that is empty. So anyway, I'll use those, and of course I've used all the other material here as well for little quotes and things like that in the presentation. Now this Heart Sutra has an outline, and this is what we showed you last week, right? So it begins with the title. There's a homage made, and then we get into the subject matter of the text. And the subject matter of the text has like what's called the prologue, and then the actual teaching begins with the four parts: the question, the answer, affirmation, and delight. Then it finishes. So today we're going to go up to Avalokiteshvara's responses, and particularly the responses of form is empty, emptiness is form. And this response is given on the paths of accumulation and preparation. So why I want to sort of stay around there a little bit is because it's an explanation of the correct ideas about emptiness. So I myself don't have a direct perception of emptiness. I understand to some degree conceptually, and I'm sure most of you do too, if not all of you. You have an idea of what this is about. So that's where we're going to sort of focus on this idea, the correct idea, considering the object of negation, and some of the ways you can reason to discover that form, in fact, all objects are empty. So let's have a look. I'm going to go through each of these in brief. So we're going to look at the title first of all. So you can see here the title is given in 3 different languages. So we have Sanskrit up the top, Tibetan, and then the English. So the Sanskrit is always given to show that this is an authentic sutra coming from the Buddha and from India. It's not made up by the Tibetans or anyone else. And then beneath it is the Tibetan explanation. And what I've done here is just colored in some of these words to show how they correspond. So there's not much correspondence in English, is there? Sutra and heart. So just say that the heart is like the all the perfections of wisdom teachings, like we looked at last week, 100,000, 25,000, 8,000, all these things are all pushed into this 25 verses called the Heart Sutra. This term Bhagavati, or become Latin Desma, is basically sort of saying that there's a connotation of mother, and it's saying that basically the Buddhas and all the Arahats, all the people who freed themselves from suffering and its causes, have all depended on the wisdom realizing emptiness. So wisdom realizing emptiness is like the mother. There's a lot more you could say about this, but I want to say much more about other things. And you can find out, of course, a lot more about this in any of the books that I had up there. So there's the title given, like I said, the major reason for giving it is just that you know this is an authentic teaching from the Buddha. You can have conviction in it. Then we begin, the next thing is the homage. So there are different forms of homage. So I've picked 3 out of some of the books I use, and you see they're all different. Right? So Edward Conn says, homage to the perfection of wisdom, the lovely, the holy. The homage in the essence of the Heart Sutra is homage to the Bhagavati, the perfection of wisdom. And finally, in our essential Buddhist phrases, I prostrate to the Arya triple gem. There's also a lovely homage given by the Sera Monastery, which is, I don't know whether you've heard it, but I'll just say it to you. It's a lovely homage to unpack. You know, it says, I prostrate to the mother of the conquerors of the 3 times, the perfection of wisdom, indescribable by words or thoughts, which does not arise and does not cease, in nature like space, whose object belongs to the individual subject's awareness. So I really love like hearing that. There's so much are in it. Now, the purpose of these homages, where they're different like this, is to, it has 2 functions basically, and this is what they are. The first is to dispel any obstacles that might arise in the composition of the text. So this sutra was translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan in the 8th century. It was sponsored by the king of the time, King Trisong Detsen. So the homage is made first to dispel the obstacles, but then secondly is to identify the scriptural collection in which it belongs. Now, the scriptural collections are those of the Abhidhamma, which is sort of like Buddhist science, the sutras themselves, and the Vinaya, talking about the behavior of the ordained. But if a homage was made to Manjushri, you'd know it'd have to be about the Buddhist science. If it's made to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, you know, okay, that's the sutra. But made to the mind of the Buddha, of course, it is to do with the behavior and the rules and so forth of the ordained. So remember, so the homage here was made to, I prostrate to the Arya triple gem. So that tells us it's from the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, because they are the Arya triple gem. So we know that, like, it's a sutra, in other words. Right? And and as you know, when the thing begins, the sutra actually begins, it starts off by saying, thus did I hear it one time. And this is what's called, this part here is just called a common prologue. It's called common because it deals with the, those aspects of the background that are easily understood and were commonly known to those who are present. So it tells us a number of different, they call different excellences. And it's what they also call the basis for our discussion, meaning the background or the setting for the sutra. So depending upon what commentary you read, these four excellent features can be said just in this part here, or in all of it. And so all of it is going to tell us, like, there was somebody there, an excellent teacher. There were other people there that were listening to it. It's going to tell us what the place was and the time it was given. These are called the four excellent features. So of course, the great teacher is the Buddha, the Bhagawan. Thus, did I hear it one time, the Bhagawan was dwelling. But he's the teacher, the Bhagawan, with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. So this is the audience. So the great refers to the numbers of them, but also some of these bodhisattvas were right up on the 8th, 9th, and 10th ground bodhisattvas. So those are very highly realized people. It also tells you the different time, meaning that it was suitable to give this teaching at this time. People were receptive to it. And finally, like the place. So Bolts is mounted in Rajagriha, which is this, so it looks like this today. Now this is like the common prologue. What I'll do now is do the uncommon prologue, and then I'll pause and ask you guys if you have any questions about what we've covered so far. I know I'm doing it quite brief, because I don't want to stay here too long, what we could do, because of the other material coming up. So let's have a look now at this uncommon prologue. And this is what it is. It says, at that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also, at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So this is like I said, this is the unique or uncommon prologue, which explains aspects of the sutra that were not commonly known or obvious to many of those present. Like, for instance, the blessing of concentration, whereby Shariputra actually asks the question. So at that time here refers to the one time that this scripture was delivered, this Heart Sutra was given. The Bhagawan, the Buddha, of course, meaning he's conquered all the forces of negativity. He's overcome what they call the four obstructive forces, also known as the four maras. And these maras, of course, or the four obstructive forces, are the maras of the afflictions, death, the aggregates, and the attachment to sensory gratification. So sometimes that's called the Deva Putras. And here's a little breakdown for you. So it says in the categories of phenomena called profound perception. So profound meaning very, very deep, are hard to hold on to and difficult to understand. Perception, how all these objects, for instance, the five aggregates, the person, all the other objects, how these objects appear to wisdom. Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, again, talking about the exalted qualities of these bodhisattvas, especially Avalokiteshvara. Like I said, here he's like the 10th ground bodhisattva, so it's very in this presentation, he's like very, very close to being a Buddha himself. But yeah, the mighty one who looks down. This is what Avalokiteshvara means. And this very practice of the profound. This is the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom. So it's sort of saying the practice of the profound. So the practice is the conduct of the Bodhisattvas. How do you engage in the six perfections? How do you engage with a mind of enlightenment which is empty of any intrinsic nature? Then he says the five aggregates also. So the also here is really like it's referring to the person. This word empty will come up a lot. So it just means like it's a negation. It means like without something, or it's a negation of without, an absence, or like you say, no independence, no intrinsic nature, no existence from its own side. And inherent nature, of course, means something is not. If something could exist without inherent nature, it would mean that it could exist without being imputed by mind, in particular conception. And these five aggregates also. So as you know, the five aggregates are these. Form, and we begin later on with dealing with the form, the body. The next four will have to do with the mind. Feeling is a mental factor, discrimination is a mental factor, compositional factors are all the rest of the mental factors, and consciousness itself. So here we talk about the primary consciousness, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So I'm just going to stop here. And Miffy's got her hand up. She'd like to ask something. What would you like to ask?
I've got a question. So a couple. So one of them, when you said about the profound concentration, is that
Yep.
like that the people that were there and the Bodhisattvas were there were inspired by the Buddha to have those questions or that kind of concentration? And I'm just trying to like link it back to my own experience. Like, for instance, the few times I've been able to be in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's presence when he's giving teachings, I get really good questions, and it's like not because my questions are good, but through the inspiration of Rinpoche. So is that what you're meaning, that kind of thing of just being so inspired by the Buddha there?
Yeah, in terms of Shariputra's question, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So it wouldn't necessarily have been something he was mulling over for months beforehand? No, okay.
No, not necessarily. No. At least I've never read that being the case. Right. So with Shariputra, there are different positions taken on who he was. So Shariputra means, the son of Shari. Now, if you look at it from the perspective of the Hinayana Sutras, then Shariputra is not a bodhisattva. And so then you have to say, so why is he asking the question? He's not a bodhisattva. So in this, so like I said, there's different ways of looking at like who Shariputra actually is and what he represents here. I'm just going to see if I had a note here about Shariputra here. Yeah, so Shariputra, as you probably also know, some of the Tankas, he's one of the principal guys standing there. It's usually Shariputra and Modgalyayana, and sometimes it's
at the feet of the Buddha, isn't it? The two
Yeah, that's
major
right. There's
disciples
two
of the
monks
Buddha.
both holding these two staffs. So that's one way of it. And then other times it is, I think, Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara or Vajrapani in terms of the disciples standing there. So Shariputra was one of Buddha's two principal disciples. And he was said to have the clearest understanding of emptiness. And he is an Arya and then became an Arahat. But here, we should understand him to be a really highly attained Bodhisattva, not simply a disciple of the Buddha.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, so he's also in meditation. They're all in meditation. And of course, and the Buddha is too. But it's like I say, through the blessing of Buddha's concentration, that Shariputra is inspired to ask this question. And of course, he just asks, and at the very same time, because Avalokiteshvara is also meditating upon emptiness. So then so Avalokiteshvara answers. So these are both inspired by the Buddha, Shariputra's question and Avalokiteshvara's answer.
Wow. The other part of my question was about, you mentioned about the perception being perceived by wisdom, which is a really novel way of putting it and really nice. I'm just trying to figure out how I could remember that.
Yeah, so it's not being, like I said, so different ways of perceiving things. So for most of us, we don't perceive mentally. I mean, we can, so when we dream, that's probably the closest we come to it, right? So something appears in our dreams. And that's, so it's a perception, mental perception, a dream perception. Otherwise, we are perceiving with our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, that sort of way.
Yeah. So just trying to bring it back to everyday experience, then that kind of perception, is that when you figure something out? So you've been doing it with your mind, it's not coming through your senses, but you have the aha moment and you figure something out, you go, oh, I get it. Is that close?
Yeah, that's right. It's on that way.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. You perceive something, and the perception, like you know something, like you know it, right? And that's just like you're saying. So you think it through, and then you often like stop thinking, and then
you get it.
You get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You perceive. You know. Yeah, and it's not like it's not through the thinking. Like I said, the thinking is sort of stopped. The thinking is the conceptual part, which is what we'll be talking about today. Yeah. And then the thinking stops, and then it's like, and oftentimes, like you might find this happen in the shower.
Or on the bus.
Yeah, on the bus. Now, you've thought about it all last night, and you've stopped thinking about it, and now you're sitting there, it's like, right? It's like, it just arises. Yeah, it's like.
And I think Susan's got a question.
Okay, Susan, what's your question?
Yeah, I have two short questions. The first one is, a while back you were explaining something and you put it up on the screen. Inherent blank. I didn't get the second word. It means not imputed by mind or perception.
Yep. So inherent nature.
Inherent nature, that's it. Okay. The second question is, can you define primordial mind? I don't get what that means. I hear it a lot. I've heard it by Venerable Robina, used it a lot, and others. And I just can't quite get it, what it means.
Okay. Often, I guess it would depend upon the context that these words are in. So often primordial mind just means like beginningless, endless, subtle mind. That's the primordial mind. Beginningless, endless, subtle mind that is empty of any intrinsic nature.
But what does that mean? I mean, does that
Well,
mean like
what
the
it-
clear light, the clear mind without?
No, well, that's
any-
again, the different, again, it depends upon the context. So like you said, the clear light. So then clear light often refers to emptiness in the sutras. No, but then clear light has a different meaning in Tantra. So I was thinking, what were the other terms? You had primordial mind and you got clear light. So like I said, clear light, different explanations depend upon context, and it's same with primordial mind. Different meanings from in context, and also which school is using this term. Is it Nyingma or is it Galupa? You know, so
that's probably why I don't understand it, because I never
Well,
know
no, it's
all of the
surprising.
context.
no, that's right. It's
Also-
not surprising.
Often, like in our centers, in the FPMT centers, you know, with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's kind of way of teaching, everything he teaches is from a tantric context. Even if he's talking about sutra and preliminary practices, it's always from a tantric point of view. So often, just generally, when primordial mind is mentioned, it's from that tantric point of view of the most subtle mind.
The most subtle mind.
Yeah.
The one that goes from life to life, like Eddie said. And I think
yeah.
often Venerable Rabina will then put it in colloquial terms and say what sometimes you might think of as a soul, that's probably as close as you'd get to from a correlation with Buddhist understanding of consciousness.
Okay, thank you, Miffy. That helps. Yeah, I had it completely wrong. I had a wrong conception of what it meant. So I'm glad to get some perspective. It depends on the context, and then it's tantric, and so okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Both of you.
Okay. So should we okay to move on? Okay, let's have a look now at this. We're going to share the screen. So this now leads. So this was the what they call the introduction. So there's, remember, the introduction had the title, the homage, common prologue, and an uncommon prologue. There are 4 parts to the introduction. Now we start to engage with the wisdom, and the engagement begins, of course, with Shariputra's question, Avalokiteshvara's answer. Later on, the teacher's affirmation and the assembly's pledge. So just as you point out, so we've got to remember, everyone's sort of in meditative equipoise. Everybody's sort of like deeply concentrating. And out of this concentration, Shariputra is inspired to ask his question. And this is what it says. It says, then through the power of the Buddha, the power of this concentration, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? So again, I'm going to sort of unpack this. So we said before that Shariputra should be seen to be a high-level bodhisattva. Avalokiteshvara, here's an interesting, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, a very, very high, like on the 10th ground, just before Buddhahood itself. Son of the lineage, anybody who's interested in developing their Buddha nature fully, so they can actually become a Buddha. And the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom is, of course, the perfections. So I'll just unpack it again. So through the power of the Buddha, this great blessing of concentration, the Venerable Shariputra, so he's an Arahant monk, learned in the Abhidharma, incredibly bright, but for here we're looking at him as a bodhisattva. But this is what often he looks like when you see the tankas of the Buddha. He's on one side and Mahayana's on the other side. So to be a son of the lineage, like I said, those who are actively and fully engaged in bringing their Buddha nature to the fruition of the nature body of a Buddha. And practicing the activity, how can we conjoin what we know with emptiness? How do we do that?
So Eddie, this thing with practicing the activity, I often forget about the whole empty nature of like the 6 perfections, you know, because we get so involved in how to do the perfections, generosity and ethics and all of that, even though the whole context is actually, the big picture is that it's remembering the empty nature of it. So when they talk about practicing the activity, that's really what that's the main thing, isn't it? To the emptiness part of practicing generosity, or the emptiness part of practicing ethics.
Yeah, without the knowledge and the experience of the empty nature, there's no freedom. Remember yesterday when Geshe was talking in class with me? So that he went like, the most important thing is the empty. It's the empty nature of all phenomena. So what we're sort of getting at here, as you'll see, is that, phenomena exist. It's not that they don't exist, they do exist, but we are misapprehending them. We're giving them sort of a quality that they don't actually have. And that quality that we're giving them is inherent nature, objective existence, and independent existence. Those phenomena don't have that. But they look as if they do, and we're assenting to it. And we keep ourselves trapped that way. So this is like, okay, so it's like this tricky thing here, isn't it? Sometimes when you hear the word empty, you might think, it's nothing. So there's nothing. There's nothingness and there's somethingness.
Or it's just meditating, like in the concentration on it, rather than going about in the world.
So, okay, let's have a look now at Avalokiteshvara's answer. So, look, he said that. So, Sariputta said that. And the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara, said this to the Venerable Sharad Bhattiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this: correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. So this begins Avalokiteshvara's response to Shariputra's question. And as I said, the first, any son or daughter of the lineage, meaning men and women, any man or woman who wishes to cultivate their own Buddha nature, is able to bring about enlightenment for themselves by depending upon this perfection of wisdom. So again, I'll have a breakdown. So this first part he gives is for those like us with inferior faculties, meaning we're not up on the grounds, right? We haven't, it's for those people like we haven't got path of seeing, we're not on the path of meditation, we're not on the path of no more learning, and we're not enlightened. Neither are we arahats or aryas. Now, the people that were in this audience, a lot of them were quite highly realized. Nevertheless, they were not as bright, for instance, as Avalokiteshvara. He's a 10th ground Bodhisattva. So we've got Bodhisattvas sort of going all the way up from the path of seeing onwards. So he's going to give a training for those people, for everyone, but he's also going to give an explanation about the training for those who are like Avalokiteshvara himself, very bright. And then he's going to sum it all up and encourage us all to engage in wherever we find ourselves on the path. Yep, I think that should do. So within this is like, I said in the explanation, we've got a brief explanation and then quite a substantial explanation. So here's the brief one. Correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also is empty of inherent nature. Like this, correctly and repeatedly. So where did this, I didn't color in like this, but those two words there, sort of like, so when a person begins training themselves in the wisdom realizing emptiness, they're introduced to it through different, what they call different tenet systems, meaning different systems of belief. So you might start off with thinking, like the world is real. So you have this realistic type of way of looking, just like it looks to us now. So it's okay, I'll explain to you emptiness from that perspective. So this is what they call the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika presentation.
Can you just stop the screen?
Thank you, Miffy. Yep. Well, if you can refute that view of a real world existing in the way that the Sautrantikas and Vaibhashikas present it to you. And that's exactly what the mind only do, or the Chittamatra school do. They go, there's no such world that exists in the way you're talking about it. Actually, the only thing that really exists is mind. So they go, okay, so how do we apply this knowledge of emptiness to the mind? Then you come across the middle way and go, actually, this is a bit too extreme from both sides. It's not that there is no physical world and there's only just the mind. In fact, we can explain it having both these two existing. So we can take a middle way approach to it. So one of the middle way schools will go present it one way, and then finally the consequent school will present it the other way. So like this is a way of like climbing rungs of a ladder of understanding. But we start at the ground level and we move up gradually, and we sort of get, I get it. We try in a way that suits us.
So it is okay to actually start where we are, of going, everything looks real, and then just work through it really slowly.
Of course. Yep, that's right. Yeah. Of course, this is not the way it's often presented. Unless you're going to what they call like a shedra or a type of where the monks are in the FPMT. Unless you're sort of there, you don't get these really quite deep presentations of all the tenet systems and things like that.
Yeah, we just go straight to, as Venerable Robina says, like university, from kindergarten to university. We're just like running.
Yeah, that's right. So, and that's what we're basically going to be doing today, and the rest of the classes. We're going to go straight to the top. And now we might not get it, but it'll, directly, of course, but at least we know we're at the top looking down. We say middle way consequence presentation is the peak, the highest presentation, the most subtle presentation, and I'm being introduced to it. And you might say, and I just don't get it. Yeah, that's okay. That's great. Let's just go down then. What about the next one? You get the middle way autonomy. You go, no, I don't. What about mind only? No, I don't. Okay, we need to come back to being all grounded in what seems the real world. So then we go Sautrantika, or then we go Vaibhashika. And so then we start wherever we find ourselves there. And what you normally find is, especially if you haven't studied tenets, like it deeply, you're here and there. Sometimes, like Miffy did, Miffy says, I am a middle way autonomous with leanings towards middle way consequence. And
with tendency.
You might find the same. But what's even more important is just look at your behavior. your behavior will tell you much more about where you're really at than what you think you are. Right? Yeah. So most of us will find ourselves still thinking we're in this real world. So when I say real here, I mean a world that exists inherently, intrinsically, objectively, independent of us. That's what it looks like, and most of us are still trying to deal with that. So, what time does this class finish? 12:30? Is it after? Good, I got half an hour. That's great. Okay, let's go back. Let's see. So then we've got correctly and repeatedly. So that just means you've got to do it again and again and again. We've got to get a correct understanding first and then familiarize ourselves with it. This is what meditation means, isn't it? Just going over it again and again and again. And what we're going over and over again, and we're doing this correctly, is these 5 aggregates and the person, I. We're trying to just, become familiar with the idea that we are empty of inherent nature. In fact, all phenomena are empty of inherent nature. So how do we sort of do that? Well, I'm just going to come off here again and just talk to you a bit. So how do we do it? So we do it as we are doing it. So it often begins by you going along to a teaching, and a teacher, especially in the group lineage, they start off pretty much quickly, or get right into emptiness quickly. Right? It's like the basis of everything. And so it's new to us. We oftentimes, most people go, I don't know what they're talking about. Is emptiness like it seems to me like they're talking about things don't exist at all, like it's all nothing. But then they say to me, well, it's no, it's not nothing. So I just can't get it. So like for us, it takes a number of listenings to authentic, well-learned teachers explaining emptiness to us, what emptiness is, what things are empty of, and so forth. So we're hearing that, but as you all know, we don't get to have teachings every day from the Lama or the well-versed, well-studied people. So that requires us to read and think about the material and talk to one another. And so that's what we do. And over time, and when I mean over time, I mean more than 10 years. In general, unless you're sharp, right, it takes quite a bit to get this stuff, get your head around it. And unless you're fortunate to be born as a human being and you've got all these imprints from emptiness from other lives. And sometimes you might hear it and you go, oh my God, that's it. You get really enthusiastic about it. You go, okay, you'll be a bit better. Miffy.
Just as you're saying that, what can happen, which might give everyone a little bit of encouragement, is that if you do kind of day by day try and do the study or just listen or whatever, even if it just feels like it's pinging off your head, if you do that, but then have the opportunity to listen to Lama Zopa Rinpoche teach or Geshe Sherab teach, who's so clear, having done all that prep, it means that while you're there, you just go, yes, 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 and you get it through their inspiration, through hearing from someone who's actually got realization. So even if we don't get those realizations as we're doing the reading, it all counts, and it's all prep for having that inspiration, just like in the Heart Sutra of, they had the inspiration of the Buddha. Listening to Geshe Sherab give teachings on emptiness, then if you've prepared your own mind like that, then it really goes in so nicely and easily.
Yep. So we, and then what we've got to do, so we listen and read and then think about it. So as I think about it, I mean, use this knowledge and yes. Let's see. Everything that does exist, right? Everything that does exist. This is how I take it. This is my working with it. Once you sort of get your head around this, you'll go, okay, so what I'm understanding, what you guys are telling me, is that everything appears to me to exist inherently. So that's great. That's great knowledge, because you can look down at everything and go, so the door is appearing to me to be inherently existent. Miffy looks to be inherently existent. I am apprehending myself as if I'm inherently existent. So we've got all these phenomena that exist. Yeah, okay, so, well, what does this inherent existence look like? Right? If you're saying if you start telling me a trees and it appears to be inherently existent, but in fact it isn't, it's empty of that, what's the inherent existence? If you can get that, so, you know, the first thing is like this idea of like, I'm going to start working with everything around me because it's all there, it's great. And then I go, okay, if that tree is inherently existent, it means this. If I'm inherently existent, it means this. And then you got to go, well, I'm not like that. The tree's not like that. Yeah, that's right. It's empty of that. It looks like it's got it, but it doesn't have it. So this is a great way of using conventionalities, the world that appears to be inherently existent, and you to go look at it every time and learn from it and go, my God, it's true what they say. It's so deceptive. It looks like that, and it's not like that.
So Eddie, I can get that with impermanence. That one I can remember to do. I look at things and then I go, yeah, they look like they're going to be like that forever, but no, that one's fairly easy.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's just like that. It's like taking the first step you go, like I relate to my partner or I relate to phenomena as if they are permanent, that they're not subject to change. That's how I'm relating to it. And they actually look as if they're not changing. So we have that, we can work with that and go, yeah, the tree doesn't look like it's changing. I don't look like I'm changing. My partner doesn't. The house doesn't. But my gosh, it is. So there's this deceptive appearance, the deceptive appearance of permanence where there is none. So we can do that, and we do. We're encouraged to do that so that we don't grasp at permanence where there isn't any. And then we just do the same thing with inherent existence. Kodo, yes?
So are the compositional factors of the five aggregate, those the parts of the atoms? What are compositional factors is the question.
You'll have to say it again, Kodo.
It's breaking up a bit. Something about Kodo, your bandwidth
let me say it again.
Gone.
Let me say it again. What are the compositional factors? Are they atoms or parts of atoms? Thank you.
Okay. Compositional factors.
Out of the five aggregates.
Yeah.
So they're mind, aren't they? Not form.
No, they're form. When you talk about atoms, you're talking about physical phenomena. Yeah. They all go into the category of form. Right? But you can also have phenomena that aren't, they're not exactly form, but they're not exactly mental either. And those are phenomena that often go into the compositional factors. space, time, area, age. All of these phenomena go into that category.
Oh, so they were the ones you were talking about in the class last week of like abstract phenomena, like
Yeah, that's right.
like the number line, negative numbers. So they're not a form, but they're not a mental thing. They're some other category.
That's right. So that's the category they go into. So karma goes into that category. The self goes into that category. In fact, that's probably the category that's the most full of everything. Yeah. Okay, so let's have it. Okay, so we're studying as best we can. And not only are we studying about emptiness, we're also studying about compassion and the mind of enlightenment, and we're trying to become what we're studying. We're trying to become compassionate, wise people. So over a period of time, we will actually develop our inner resources so that we have a really good state of concentration. We might even have an authentic compassion towards ourselves, so that we've decided I'm no longer going to hurt myself. If you got that, you'd have renunciation. If you had decided in the same way I'm not going to hurt myself, I'm not going to hurt others either. In fact, I'm going to protect myself and them from suffering. And if that was something that became natural to you over time, you are now entering a path. Until that happens, you don't actually enter a path. We're still good people trying hard, trying to change ourselves, but we're not into any path yet. So I'll introduce you now to these paths and show you what we're doing on them in terms of the wisdom. Okay, so the first path is called the Path of Accumulation. It's defined like this: a realization of a Bodhisattva who principally accumulates a collection of merit that is a method for attaining the Mahayana path of preparation. In brief, it means if you have the mind of enlightenment, you have enough merit to have created a mind that wishes to attain enlightenment for the benefit of others. It's natural, it's authentic. It doesn't require you to do any thinking to have it, you have it. You've now entered the path of accumulation. So you can see this path here depends upon the mind of enlightenment, not the wisdom realizing emptiness. It's the mind of enlightenment that allows you to enter this particular path within the Mahayana vehicle. And it has 3 stages within it, called small, middle, and great. Now, what we're doing here is we've accumulated enough knowledge to enter the path, but we need to accumulate a lot more wisdom to get out of cyclic existence. So here we're just like where we are now, we might not have entered the path, but we're taking as much of our knowledge and comprehension of understanding of emptiness, and we find ourselves on the path of accumulation with a mind of enlightenment. And what we're mainly doing here is listening to teachings. We're listening more and more, and we're thinking about it. We're contemplating it. It's called the path of accumulation because we are accumulating the conditions to gain a union of serenity and insight into emptiness. So we don't have it yet, but we want to have it. So on this small phase here, we don't necessarily have the correct view of emptiness. We might be up onto the what do you call it, Chittamatra view, or the middle way autonomous view. But we're still working on it. But by the time you meet middle and great, we've got the correct view of emptiness. So which means we now have the middle way consequence view of emptiness. By the time we reach the middle of the path of accumulation.
And Eddie, is that that's the view? So it's a correct
That's
view,
the
but we
view.
haven't directly realized it yet.
That's right. We are
Okay.
like, we're still intellect, we've
Yeah.
got it correct intellectually, the middle and great aspects. Are there any other questions just on this path of accumulation?
So you said that it's that what gets you here is that is the Bodhisattva
The
attitude.
authentic
So
mind of enlightenment.
right, you couldn't get on this path like from a Hinayana point of view, like an individual liberation. Then, But
Yes, you
or it
could.
wouldn't.
Yeah, you could, but I don't want to go down that. That opens up a whole nother discussion.
So is this just in general, or is this to do with this sutra, that the sutra is a Mahayana sutra?
It is a Mahayana sutra, but persons on the what are you going to say, of the Hinayana paths, right, can still enter into this path.
Yeah. Okay.
But I didn't want to open that up. That's a whole nother discussion on paths and grounds, and we won't get to the end of this if we do that. So this is just like in general. Right?
Yeah. And so what you're talking about is here, like it says, the Mahayana path of preparation.
That's
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Of accumulation here. Accumulation. Barbara, you have a
Oh,
question?
yeah. Yep. Barbara's also got a question.
Yeah.
I do have a question, Eddie, and again, maybe this is a whole nother class. If I
Mhm.
understood you correctly, you said that the mind of enlightenment is not the same as the wisdom understanding emptiness.
That's right. That's correct. That's right.
And is
Yep.
that a whole nother class, or you, or I thought it was the same.
No. They're two different things. One has to do with the method side, and one has to do with the wisdom side. But they've got to be brought together and practiced together.
So
Hey.
mind of enlightenment is a term that we use to translate bodhicitta, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. We can have conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. And ultimate bodhicitta is when this conventional mind of enlightenment is together with the wisdom realizing it's empty. Yeah, so they're two different things, Barbara, but they've got to be brought together. As Rabinus often uses the analogy of the two wings of a bird. You need both to fly. But to enter this path, you only need one. One wing will get you into here. Authentic mind of enlightenment.
So can I just clarify if I get this?
Yeah.
So you can have the wisdom of understanding emptiness, but if you're not on the Bodhisattva path, you're not going to get to enlightenment?
In the Hinayana, the other paths, the paths of the foe destroyers, right?
Yeah.
So they don't want to become a Buddha. They want to just free themselves.
Right.
They don't need the mind of enlightenment, but they do need the wisdom realizing emptiness, and they do need the mind of renunciation. So it's the mind of renunciation that gets them into the path of accumulation. And while they're on it, they're doing just the same things as the Bodhisattvas are doing, trying to understand emptiness clearly, correctly, and move up to get to the path of seeing.
Thank you. Lots for me to think about. Thank you.
Yeah.
So actually, Eddie, there's like a parallel with if you're on the individual vehicle,
Liberation.
then your main motivator is renunciation, and you try and understand emptiness. But if you're on the universal vehicle, wanting to become a Buddha for the benefit of all, then your main motivation is conventional bodhicitta, altruism,
Yeah.
And you're still trying to understand emptiness.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so like I said before, the wisdom realizing emptiness is the mother. Right? You want to become a foe destroyer, you want to liberate yourself, you need this wisdom. If you want to become a Buddha, you need this wisdom. So it gives birth to both types of being. Whereas the father, the method, can be different. Okay, let's have a look. So,
just quickly, Susan's also got a question.
Okay, Susan, yep. Susan?
Yeah, so is the mind of enlightenment then like the compassionate side, the side of compassion?
Yep, that's right. Yeah,
And,
it's
and so
compassion
that makes
developed.
sense. Compassion and wisdom have to be united. Yeah.
Yeah, so the compassion is not the mind of enlightenment. It's a prerequisite for the mind of enlightenment. So definitely need great compassion to take on this responsibility, then have the mind of enlightenment. And the mind of enlightenment gets you into this path of accumulation. And now we still want to become a Buddha, and we realize that depends upon the wisdom realizing selflessness or emptiness. So I need to actually have that as well.
So it's like Venerable Rabina talks about the compassion wing, but compassion itself is like a precursor to the mind of enlightenment.
That's right. Yeah. Is that okay, Susan?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. So let's have a look now. So what are we doing here? So like I said before, we're trying to understand emptiness. So we've got to get a good conceptual understanding of it first. And these are the conceptions, the ideas you can get that draw you to understanding emptiness. The simplest, and the one that Lama Tsongkhapa suggests, is dependent arising. Anything that exists dependently lacks inherent existence, is empty of inherent existence. If a phenomenon is empty of inherent existence, it dependently arises. That's the simplest one. Another one is called the Diamond Slivers, where they refute 4 extreme ways of being. We're going to do this one here, reasoning establishing the lack of being one or many. And then there's the 5-fold reasoning and the 7-fold reasoning. Some of you might be familiar with the 7-fold reasoning, when you get a chariot and then you break it down, and there's 7 ways you can look at it. So this is all reasoning. So we can become familiar with any of the reasons that suit us. And then we're trying to develop it to actually get a direct insight into the emptiness of the phenomena. So this is next week, we're going to focus on this reasoning establishing the lack of being one or many. And I want to introduce you to a couple of meditations to show you that it's neither, that both are empty. And if both are lacking inherent existence, then there's no inherent existence. The phenomenon is empty of inherent existence. But that's for next week. So we take this thing here, it's correct, we get this correct understanding on the, what's it called, the medium and the great scope of the path of accumulation. So just imagine, you have this reasoning here, you're understanding it, and you're applying it. And this is happening on the path of accumulation. So what's going to make the change between the path of accumulation and the path of preparation for a direct perceptual understanding of emptiness? What the difference is that you have the state of deep concentration called calm abiding. This is on the path of accumulation, but it's being merged now with the insight. So these two, it's like what we said before, they're coming together now. Now we've got 2 things coming together. It's just not bodhicitta and the thing, but it's coming together, right? So what we're gonna end up with here to enter into the path of preparation is a realization by the Bodhisattva who has attained superior seeing, observing emptiness, that serves as a preparation for attaining the Mahayana path of seeing. But so there's quite a lot happening here. So we've got, in other words, like this calmly abiding mind. We actually have the reasons and we know how to use the reasons. And we also have the mind of enlightenment. And that moves us into this path of preparation, which has got these 4 parts. And what these parts are basically saying is that we're getting closer and closer and closer to realize emptiness directly. And when we do, that'll be called the path of seeing. Now, in the text, this path of preparation and the path before it, the path of accumulation, are referred to as gate gate. Go onto the path of accumulation. Go onto the path of preparation. Gate gate. We'll go over this again, but I just want to introduce it to you now so that we've got something to hold with.
So that's the mantra that you're referring to,
Yeah, that's right.
That last week for the really smart ones, they just heard the mantra and got the entire
They knew
sutra.
all this. That's right. So no doubt this could come to us in time, eh? We could go, gate, yeah, no. We could go path of accumulation, path of preparation, 3 parts, 4 parts. This is what's going on. Yeah, like that. Now, okay, so like I said, so next week we're going to be looking at this meditation, reasoning, establishing the lack of being one or many. So now I just want to introduce it to you briefly now, and then go into it in depth next week. Now it's also called Nagarjuna's 4 keys. 4 keys to understanding. Right? So that way, what we got to do is identify the target. The target is any object that appears to have inherent existence. So it's the inherent existence that we're trying to find that. Because it's quite interesting. Inherent existence doesn't exist. So sort of asking us, well, if it did, what would it look like? That's what we've got to work out. And so that's what I was saying before. Look, it's wonderful. If everything around you looks as if it's inherent existence, we've got a lot of objects we can look at and go, okay, how? Is this inherent existence? What does that mean? So we have to identify, like I said, this target called inherent existence. And then what we do is we limit the possibilities. So we're saying that if this phenomena exists in the way it appears to me, it can only be this way or that way. And there are no other options, no other possibilities.
So that's like setting up a mathematical framework. This is the logic part, isn't it? That we just what do they call it? Like the scope.
Like for instance, just do this briefly. If we are looking, we're asking ourselves, the I appears to be inherently existent. So that's our target. The I that appears to be inherently existent. So then we say, okay, if it is inherently existent, these are the 2 possibilities. It is either one and the very same as the body and mind, or the mind or the body, just either of those, if you like, is exactly the same, or it's completely different. They're the only 2 possibilities. It is inherently the same, or it's inherently different. And if it's not inherently the same or inherently different, it is not inherently existent. Because they're the only 2 possibilities for inherent existence. Is that clear to people?
No, what do you mean different from what? I mean, I get up to that.
Different from, okay,
The
different
same as
from.
what and different from what?
Hey, Susan, if the I is inherently existent, it is the same as the body, same as your
Oh,
body.
okay, I see what you mean.
And if it's inherently different, it's something that's not your body. It's completely unrelated to your body.
So that's like the biggest possibilities. It either is the body or isn't the body. There's nothing else.
Nothing
you can't
else.
go,
That's right.
well, it's a third thing.
That's right. There is no third possibility here.
Yeah.
So you can do it with the body, then you can do it with the mind. Right? It's either inherently the same as the mind or it's inherently other than the mind. And if it's neither of those, it doesn't inherently exist. It's as if the body or the mind had this quality of inherent existence. Right? And then we look for it and go, oh my gosh, it's not there. Right? It's either there or it's somewhere else. So if it's there, we should find it. If it's not,
What about inherent mind-body
and if it's not in the other place, sorry, Susan?
What about inherent mind-body, mind and body unified, connected to each other? Not either or,
Mind, the
but
body?
a third entity.
Okay, let's just stop right there. Is the mind the body?
Well,
No, it's not. It doesn't have any of the characteristics of a body.
no.
There's no putting those two together and saying they're inherently one, but they're obviously not. They're not even conventionally the same.
But they interact through.
Yes, of course, but that's, of course they interact. So there are two phenomena, body, mind, and person, three in fact.
And so Eddie, what this number 2 does, limiting the possibilities, is it gives us something that a framework that we can't wriggle out of.
No, that's
like
right. There's no wriggle room here.
Infallible.
So we limit the
logical
possibilities to
framework.
these two. We analyze oneness or sameness, or analyze difference, separateness.
Which is what Susan's beginning to do, is just analyze the oneness or analyze the difference.
That's right. So if it's not inherently one and it's not inherently different, it's not inherent at all. It is empty of inherent existence. Now, this inherent existence has a number of other names, and they're quite useful to know, and you can work with them once you become familiar with the terms and what they actually mean. But again, it takes a little bit of time. So inherent existence is a false existence. It actually, like I said, it doesn't exist. So we have to try to imagine, like, well, if it did, what would it look like? And the ways it would look like is to be phenomenal. It would look as if they were truly existent, meaning it exists in the way it appears. It means existing from its own side, meaning that if you looked from the side of the mind or the body, the I would be there. It's not. By way of its own character. So if self could exist by way of its own character, it wouldn't even need you to name it. It would be already there. It has its own character. And lastly, inherently existent. So inherently means not dependent upon, without any dependence.
So Eddie, are these for does each one get more and more subtle? Do they go in that order?
No, they're all similes. They're similes, they all mean the same thing. It's just you might find one way easier to understand it. And so if you find that way, that's enough. You can go and do the others, of course, but just that one way will be enough for you to know that the phenomena is without any inherent existence, without any independent existence, without any objective existence. Now we use all this technique of the 4 keys to find the ultimate nature of the person, the body, the mind, whatever the phenomena is, the aggregates, it doesn't matter what it is. We can use these 4 keys to find the emptiness of all of them. In fact, all it takes for you to do is find the emptiness of one of them, and it's over. You get it, right? So, as you know, in the Heart Sutra, they start with, let's begin with form, the physical phenomena of the world. But when it's in the Heart Sutra, that word also means I, the person. And in fact, it's much easier to begin with the person and then go to the aggregates. So that's what we'll do. We'll begin with the person, and you can move your methodology across to the aggregates. So this is, like I said, when we find the emptiness of the form, we're finding the ultimate nature, the profound, deepest nature of the form. And we find that it's empty of the inherent or intrinsic or objective or independent nature it seemed to have. So emptiness is not taking something away from something that was there. We're not doing that. We're just seeing it clearly.
So in other words, the form's still there, but we're seeing it as empty.
Yeah. The form won't be there in meditation. The form will vanish in meditation. It won't be there. You open your eyes up, it'll be there, and it'll appear to you as if it is intrinsically existent, but you will know it's not. Anyway, you'll see that it won't be there. We will take you through the meditation. It's like, whoa, which is good. Right? So the profundity of the ultimate is that the emptiness of form is nothing other than the form's ultimate nature. And it'll be the same for us when we do the emptiness of the person is nothing other than the person's ultimate nature. To be empty of inherent nature, intrinsic nature, that sort of thing. Any last questions anybody would like to ask?
This thing where it says profundity, is that a clue to us that it's ultimate, the ultimate nature? Is that always? Yeah,
it's like, no, it really means it's the profound nature, because it doesn't always mean the empty nature. Because as you can see, when we look at the other 4, we start using the first profundity as the profound nature of the form, but the other profundities are really dealing with its conventional existence, not its ultimate existence. But it's profound because it is
not obvious.
Yeah, that's for sure, right? It's a subtle. It's quite it's not what you'd be used to in terms of the conventional phenomena. So we wait till next week. I hope you'll be there. I've got some nice meditations for you for next week, and we'll just go at our pace. And like I said, so next week we'll focus on this profundity of form using Nagarjuna's 4 keys. So I shouldn't say this. What we'll do is we'll do the person, because the person's easy. And then once you get, you know the technique, you go, okay, well, now let's take the body. So the body is without any inherent existence. I can use these 4 keys, and I can go, because of this, it doesn't have inherent existence. And then when I did the meditation, I didn't see an inherently existent body there. It wasn't there, right? So it's empty. So we'll go through the reasoning, then we'll do a meditation, and then we'll stop again and talk, because you'll want to talk about it. That's for sure.
So let's quickly dedicate then.
Yep. So what's our takeaway today? This, I hope you'll take what we're negating is inherent existence. And we've been doing it on the paths of accumulation and preparation. We do it through conception, thinking, just getting the right way of looking at it. And profundity of form is empty of inherent nature or existence or establishment. In fact, all phenomena are empty of any inherent establishment. Basically, we looked at this today. We looked at the way of engaging with this wisdom on the paths of accumulation and preparation, introduced to Nagarjuna's 4 keys, and there's the profundity, at least the form and the path of seeing will be coming up next week. We go through the other profundities. You know, we've done it before. It was quite quick. We could go through quite quickly, I think, and then get on to, wow, what are we experiencing on the path of seeing then? What would that look like? It's fun, isn't it? It's exciting. So let's dedicate our enthusiasm, our ability to be still, to listen, to try, to learn, want to learn. Let's put all of those, all called merit, and dedicate them. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, rise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And as long as space endures, and as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. Okay. Once again, thank you very, very much for being here. Helps me live a meaningful life, do something meaningful, useful. So again, thanks, and I just appreciate you all. Thanks again. And let's see each other again next week. Stay alive, everyone, and we'll keep going. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Eddie.